Good morning. In today's second reading, St. Paul writes the Thessalonians that they all have a part to play in the local church, what we would say a parish. I think sometimes we envision the early church to be a rather peaceful place, at least interiorly. We know exteriorly, as Jesus predicts in today's gospel, that there were persecutions, there were difficulties. But we often like to think that everything was rather quite harmonious in each of the churches that were set up by Paul in his missionary efforts. But his letter to the Thessalonians proves otherwise. He reminds people to keep their noses out of other people's business. Well, we don't have that problem anymore, at least. He also reminds them that everyone has a part to play. Those who don't work shouldn't eat. It does tell us about the very close relationship that parishioners had in those days, that they were dependent upon each other for their support. Christians' communities were known for supporting one another, that no one in that community, once they entered it, would go hungry. But there was another side to that. If you were going to take part in that community, then you were to work. That also hasn't changed in almost 2,000 years. When you're part of a community of a parish, you have a part to play in its support. Each year, we talk about stewardship right before Thanksgiving as a way to remind ourselves that each of us needs to return to God a tithe for what he has given to us in support of the parish. This morning, I've invited John and Laura Bradford to speak to us about why they commit themselves in sharing their time, talent, and treasure to our parish. John and Laura.
Hello, my name is John Bradford, and this is my wife, Laura. Some of you may know me as the Wilderness Outreach guy. Our Lord and our church has given me a great gift and calling to use my time, talent, and treasures helping form priests, seminarians, laymen, fathers and sons on their journey to manhood. In the past 16 years, the Brotherhood of Wilderness Outreach has helped form over 500 men on 53 Western mountain expeditions and multiple local weekend adventures, while building and clearing over 250 miles of backpacking trails in the mountains and forests of our great nation. What a blessing in a life. I never would have guessed. If I could have gone back to the man that I was when I was 22 and said, here's what you're going to be doing, I would have said, no way. I get to work with men like our vocations director, Father William Hahn. Listen up there, young men. And director of evangelization, Dr. Adam Streitenberger, Father Eilerman, the Columbus Seminarians, the patrons of St. Joseph, and the men of many dioceses across our great country. but I didn't grow up Catholic. As a boy and young man, I attended the Methodist church, the First Methodist Church down the street. And notice I say down the street because where we are here at our home at St. Mary's, the Basilica of St. Mary's, is higher in elevation, both physically, spiritually, and intellectually. I grew from a boy to a man in the company of men in the family construction company, learning a trade and the art and science of manhood. In college, I studied physics and mathematics, and then headed west for a 5-year hero's journey, hunting for adventure and the deep meaning of God's created universe. And all that time while I was hunting for the Lord was fishing for me. I always knew and felt in my heart that true religion, true faith, would be found at the intersection of faith and science. I knew that somewhere out there was a trail that would lead me there. In 1994, a woman named Laura was sent from God, and she brought me into our church. We were married, and I came home to the Holy Roman Catholic Church, the seat of wisdom and the intersection of faith and reason, and the foundation of God's kingdom here on earth. And it is here in the Basilica of St. Mary's that Laura and I have dedicated ourselves, our vocations, and our sacrament of marriage, our time, talent, and treasure, to fight side by side for the good, the true, and the beautiful.
I am a lifelong Catholic, and that is my most precious gift. I moved to Lancaster after marrying John. God's grace has always been evident in my life, and I have been blessed to have always interiorly known that Christ was present in the Blessed Sacrament, the Eucharist. And God has answered my deepest desires of my heart. As a child, I wanted to be a nun on a ranch. Although that never happened, He made it possible for me to spend a lot of time in prayer, and I do have a horse. After my career ended and my parents died, my prayer life enabled me to intentionally discern how to know, love, and serve Him. And that discernment resulted in me receiving a certificate of spiritual theology in the graduate program, becoming a spiritual director, and accepting the invitation to become an extraordinary minister of Holy Communion to the homebound. I believe that St. Mary's is the light shining on a hill. She is that physically, she is that spiritually, and she is that intellectually. She proclaims that God is one, that God is true, and that God is beautiful. And she proclaims this through her physical beauty, and she proclaims this through the truths that are proclaimed here by our priests. And she proclaims this through each one of us who take that light into the world. And yet there are times that I wonder, is the light on the hill shining more brightly, or is it fading? The times that I wonder if her light is fading is when I'm at a funeral mass for a parishioner who has no one in the family who has remained faithful. There is no family member there to read. There is no one there who knows the responses or sings the hymns. It is Sharon and the funeral choir whose voices fill our church and re-echo within the walls and lift those voices to our God on high. It is at those times that my heart is heavy for our deceased brother or sister, and my eyes brim with tears. And I begin to wonder, will there be anyone to respond or sing at my funeral? And my heart sinks even further, and my hope is tried when I see the enormous deficit and giving each week in the bulletin, which now stands at over $65,000, and we're only 18 weeks into the fiscal year. However, the times that I see St. Mary's shining brightly is at Tuesday morning Mass with the school children. I am encouraged by their growing confidence in reading. I'm delighted by their eager hands raised to answer a question that's been asked by Father. I watch them receive the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ in the Eucharist, and I pray for each one of them that they may better know God, whom they are receiving. These children, will one of them one day grow up and read at my funeral Mass? Or will they sing in the choir? Or will they be the priest that presides at my funeral? I especially see the light of St. Mary's go out to the homebound as one by one extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion take our Lord to those who cannot be with us. I'll see a parishioner or Margaret quietly escorting our Lord to go to his beloved. Recently, a Protestant friend of mine went through a tremendous loss and a lot of family issues. Since she loves art, I invited her to come to St. Mary's before we went to lunch. She hadn't seen the beautification, but the beauty spoke to her, and it comforted her, and it inspired her to ask me about coming to Mass. One little light. I am just one little light. Yet each one of us, a little light, if we burn with the love of God, and if we burn together, St. Mary's will be a bright light on this hill for Lancaster, for the diocese, and for the world.
When Laura and I were first married, we both had corporate jobs with salaries and benefits to match. We tithed 10% back to the church. We just knew it was the right thing to do. When we started our own construction company, I left that corporate job and my salary was cut by 2/3. Yet we still gave that same amount because it was the right thing to do. 4 years later, Laura left her corporate job and came to work for our construction company. And once again, while our salaries and benefits diminished, we maintained that same dollar amount giving back to the church. The same scenario repeated itself when in 2010 we closed our construction company down and started living off our investments and retirement income while maintaining that same level of giving. Today we are giving 20% of our income back to the church. Each time one of these things happened, we prayed to the Lord and we waited for him to speak to us. And each time he told us, let it roll. We do this because we love our church and the Catholic faith. Our faith provides us everything that makes our lives worth living. The real trail to the good, the true, and the beautiful. Once again, in this year of 2022, we as church find ourselves challenged. Inflation is draining our savings. COVID has caused a 20% drop in our attendance and our revenues. And our beliefs and way of life are coming under an increasing attack from the secular culture. Wow. Aren't we blessed to be living in the greatest time in the history of the world? What a great and exciting time to be alive. Welcome to the new apostolic age. So how do we proceed from here? I just have some humble suggestions that Laura and I have used through the past. First, today and for the rest of the weekend, seriously pray to God, enter into a conversation and a prayer with him. Lord, what would you like me to do with my time, talent, and treasures? What more would you like me to do with my time, talent, and treasures. Seriously think about these things and meditate on them, and the Lord will answer. Second, reach out to our brothers and sisters who have fallen away, or brothers and sisters who are looking for the real place where the light shines on the hill. Visit with them. Ask them to return to the church, or ask them to come and visit. Third, assess and reassess your giving strategy. Be intentional. If you are a first-time giver, just start small, maybe $5 or $10 a week, and start small so that you can persist and be intentional week after week. Just make a promise to yourself and to God in your own heart to give. And if you're already giving, do the same thing again. What more can I give? What more can I do? Can I give on top of what I'm doing an extra $5 or $10 or 5%? For Laura and I, we are going to lead with our faith and love and increase our gifts to the Basilica of St. Mary the Assumption. Our life's goal is to become complete self-gift for our church and our Lord, and to leave it all on the playing field. Thank you for allowing us to speak our hearts with you.
Thank you, Laura and John. Sometime this week, you'll all be receiving from me a letter asking you to do exactly what John just requested, that you pray, that you reflect upon what John and Laura shared with us this morning, and then that you commit to supporting the mission of St. Mary of the Assumption Church, Parish, and by your financial tithe, but also your tithe of time and talent. Along with my letter, you'll find a pledge card. Be, as John said, intentional about what you will pledge to give to the parish this coming year of 2023. Think about it. Sit down, look at your budget, look at your income, and first discern what percentage of your income you're currently giving. Do you know that? Or is it just what you happen to think and pull a number out of the air? Think about it. And then see if you cannot increase that as John and Laura suggested. If we are to continue as a church, we need the support of everyone. Remember the words of St. Paul, those who do not work should not eat. Now, there's no way for any person, including me, to tell you what you should give. I don't know your particular financial situation or the other issues in your life. That's why a percentage makes so much sense. Those who are able to give more, then give a larger percentage. Those who do not, a smaller one. Again, the important thing is that everyone gives. Why reveal this or write this down so the parish has that information? Well, first of all, it helps us all to be intentional. This is what I'm going to do. It's not just a concept. It becomes real when we fill out a pledge card. Secondly, this is of great benefit to the financial committee that is charged with making sure that we run a fiscally responsible parish. And without knowing the amount of income, it's very difficult to budget for the coming year. How do you do that? How do you make sure that you have the resources necessary to run all the different programs, the ministries that we have at St. Mary's. So it is vital that each parishioner makes a pledge, fills out a card, and send it in. I want to thank all of you who last year made a pledge and fulfilled that pledge. Thank you. We were able to accomplish a great many things because of your commitment to St. Mary. I also want to thank all of you who are continuing to pay to the capital campaign. That's almost at its conclusion, and we've been able to accomplish many great things by that campaign. The beautification of this church, the installation of a columbarium at the cemetery, the renovation of the restrooms in the school building, the installation of air conditioning in the older building, and soon to start in the newer building. These things would have been impossible without a commitment to St. Mary. But we also need day-to-day funds to exist, to pay electric, gas bills, to make sure that we're paying our staff a just wage so that they can support their families. And so that's why the offertory program is so important. It's not just waiting for a need, for the boiler to go off, or for a roof to start leaking when we need funds. We need a constant source of support so that all the many different ministries that happen here at St. Mary's can continue. Again, this week, I ask you to reflect on what John and Laura spoke to us about, to pray, and then to commit by filling out a pledge card. Thank you.